Vitu mingi sana tumeambiwa na daktari Dr. Davji, and perhaps we shall even ask our guest to do some of those issues that Kiambu County is facing, just to give a comment or two. I'm talking about Professor Martin Oloo. He is a lawyer and a political analyst as well. Professor, welcome to Radio Generation.
Asante sana.
I'm sure you're aware of what is happening in Kiambu County. There has been a strike that has lasted over 130 days. Actually, today is day 139. The doctors are currently in and out of court, engaging the county government on matters to do with health, provision of healthcare in Kiambu County. And some of the things that the SecGen of KMPDU has told us, they're very damning. And the fact that they're unable to reach the county government leadership. When it gets to a point like that where the county government is unable to talk to doctors on very critical health issues, what would you make of that?
I think there are two stories, and I was listening in when the doctor was talking. There's the good story, and he quoted the Kwale story.
Right.
And there's the bad story, and that's a Kiambu story. But the other one is, again, the bigger story, which is, have we gotten it right on matters health, particularly on the employment of doctors, even with the devolution or with the implementation of Schedule 4 of the Constitution? I think that's where our problem is. The experiences of some governors, as we've heard about Kiambu, the experiences of even the Council of Governors, as we've heard again about the Council of Governors and their purported intervention, is such that it's making us wonder whether, and maybe this is a point, are we in a place where we can leave a serious sector such as health sector to the vagaries of political decision making, or vagaries of political players who are clueless about governance and about matters health? Maybe that's the bigger story. Health is too important
question.
for us to be leaving it to some whims of a guy who then operates the way he wants because he's a small teen god. He thinks that he's the best thing that a county ever imported. No. I think we must take seriously. Health is too important.
Thank you for that comment. Let's switch back to what exactly has brought you here. And it is the Draft Religious Organizations Bill 2024. Maybe we can just have a brief introduction to what this bill is all about. In a nutshell, what does this bill seek to do?
Let me start by saying that there is an attempt by government purportedly to address what it calls cultism, to address what it calls extremism, to address what it calls rogue religious organizations. And that attempt resulted from our experience with Shakahola, and a task force was formed. Now, the task force that was formed was actually meant to look at what are the legal and policy gaps that could lead us to these kinds of organizations. Then the task force, in its wisdom or lack of it, or lack of it,
all right,
decided that there were some predisposing factors. It said that the reason why these things are there is poverty. It said unemployment. In fact, it said a high cost of health sector, health services. So it pointed at a number of things that actually seems to indicate that it's the level of desperation, the level of want, the level of hopelessness
in the country
that's leading people to some of this. Some people are selling their property to go. They were selling their property to go to.
We have actually had some of those instances.
Yes. So that the idea here was they were looking for a way out. So you sell your property to go and meet with this man who can connect you with God and so on. Desperateness. My problem, and CT and movie, my problem is, if that was the diagnosis, you've just had a doctor here who has told you that there are problems. If that was the diagnosis, to what extent is the proposed religious organizations bill the solution? And my submission is that the diagnosis and the prescription are worlds apart.
So do you agree with those findings that you just mentioned to us, the poverty levels and, the cost of health and so on and so? Do you agree with those findings?
There is, the reason why I don't want to start by saying I agree with them, there is an attempt for them to arrive at some discovery. Yeah. My position is that when I read this task force report,
yes,
it's a work of fiction rather than a work of a scientific inquiry. And when I say a scientific inquiry, is that there is a process that you must follow in a report to arrive at some conclusion. So how do they come to the point that there's predisposition, that poverty and whatnot? Because if they had done that so well, then it should have led them to their conclusions. These guys in this report make various statements and get away with it. For example, they say that they listened to expert opinion. Do you know when you read the report and you read the appendices and read the list of people they met, there is no person they are saying this was an expert or C.T. Muga, expert in theology and missiology, Mbuvi, expert in witchcraft, and then I'm just assuming that you know more about witchcraft. But I
get you.
You get me?
Yes.
So there is no place where they are saying that we actually talked to this expert.
Right.
And this guy told us this, an economic expert, development expert, somebody with the knowledge about religion, spirituality. No, there's nowhere. So they talk about that, nowhere. But again, the mistake here is more about, did they come to this task with their minds formed, or did they come to this task with an open mind? My suspicion is that their mind was formed. So
they already came, when they were coming to the table, they came with these findings. They were just working their way backwards, according to you.
According to me.
All right.
And this is why. The terms of reference tell them that please look for gaps and look for challenges that could lead to that. So you could come with some ideas about those gaps and challenges. They decided to interpret the task and give themselves 4 deliverables.
Okay.
1, they said they will deliver the report to the president. Good. Then they told themselves that they will then write a policy on religious organization.
Okay.
And then they'll say with that policy they will also write a draft bill. And then with that draft bill they will also write regulations. Surely that was an overreach of their terms of reference. They should have just come back and said, look, we looked at this, we investigated this. These are what we found. Then they would have been asked, what solutions would you propose? They say, no, with these problems, maybe we need a new way of looking at these issues. So that they would not have come with this bill, with this policy, and with these regulations, as if all they did is to go and seek to create a law. Because that's not the purpose. The purpose is, why are Kenyans ready to get into cultism? Why are Kenyans ready to get into extremism? And why is it that intolerance or religious intolerance is something that is growing, not just in Kenya but around the world?
Around the world, yes.
Yeah. The solution, my friend, is not that there's no law, is not that there is no commission in charge of religious organizations. Because one thing I believe in, just like the Americans said in 17th century,
yes,
that Congress or Parliament shall make no law respecting establishment of religious institutions and practices and belief. In other words, it is not in the place of any government or any legal institution to decide how people worship and who they worship. That is the business of man and his God. And that is business that has already been
and that's
agreed.
why they have what they call a separation of powers.
Yes.
Church and state.
Yes. Remember, there was, if your reference is the so-called Christian religion, there was one. When you hear Catholic is all encompassing. That's really what it means. And the Protestants are Protestant Catholics. That's what they actually are. When you protested, you are a heretic, just so that you understand at a certain point in time. If the church doctrine was the begin and end all of knowledge, so when they said the earth was flat, and people like Galileo dared say it was spherical, you are a heretic. And when you're a heretic, you're burnt at the stake. We've progressed since, but this particular commission that we speak of does not give us details of what it is that was found in the 1995 Commission on Cults in Country, a commission that was set in place by President Ali Arap Moi. A report was given. This was led by certain Bishop Kirima. 1999, this thing was tabled in Parliament. Okay? It was a very serious document that was written. And they went into great details, and they took their time. It ought to have formed a very key reference point for whatever it is they were talking about. They are not discussing something new to the country. They are not discussing something that hasn't happened before in the country. So, but they seem to have presented it as though they were the first people to come up with the idea of looking into this thing so that their suggestions now made sense. Instead of having a reference point from which to begin and to say, this is what we've had in the past. Let's look at how this thing compares with what we now have. They didn't do that. So when you look at their findings, anybody who is a thinker will dismiss it.
Thank you, Siti. And I know you're a thinker. Where I went into and I faulted them is, number one, on their methodology, and number two, on what they call literature review. In fact, the point you make, they said that they undertook literature review to build the theoretical foundations for their findings. And there was no theory whatsoever, and there was no foundation they laid, and there's no single citation of any literature they read in that report. You know,
including the Kirima one.
They didn't cite it. I saw somewhere in references, there's a way in which you refer to a material and you cite it in any report of any worth. And there's a way in which this report is so shallow in terms of what it says and how it concludes. In other words, it's work of fiction. It's patchwork. You're trying to arrive at a conclusion that you have already made by trying to beat around the bush. So, yes, there were reports that had been written. There are issues of even economics they talked about.
Right.
Issues of mental health. Those issues don't feature anywhere, and therefore they don't feature. Because these people went to start writing a bill, not to find out what the problem of cultism and what we can do about this extremism. They didn't. They simply thought that they were the best people to write for us a bill. Unfortunately, what they have written cannot be accepted.
Prof, let me ask you then, do you believe or do you think that we have a cult problem in Kenya?
And not just in Kenya. Do we have a cult problem in human society? In other words, are we as humans always searching and sometimes finding ourselves in places that only we can understand? And you can look at it from negation. And in fact, CT was there. That every era, every epoch, every
turn of human civilization, yes.
There is always the status quo and there is always the alternative. So that if, for example, today we said that everything about the earth is formed by God,
yes,
and there are people explaining that, there is somebody looking around us to actually find the opposite, say, no. This was not found by God. This was found by some climatic conditions,
force of nature.
Yeah,
spontaneous.
So even when Isaac Newton sits there and he sees this apple falling down and not upwards, and he talks about gravity, he learns, and you see there's a connection between gravity and law of nature and so on. Somebody says, no, this thing can fly. It can actually also drop and go forwards. So the point is that at every time in a society you have both status quo or both people who are thinking as things are and people who are trying to think otherwise so that they can give you the alternative of things.
So you're saying that there's the logic and then there's the illogical. All right.
Yeah, there's liberalism and there's illiberal.
Exactly. But my question still stands. Do you think, as professor, that we have a cult problem in Kenya?
Yes, I do. I do. And cult is, by the way, we have a big cult problem, not just in religion, even in politics.
It is
because
the
biggest cult that we have.
Yes, it is.
When you see the kind of things that people do and the kind of promises the politicians make and the belief that people have in them, that's a cult.
Yes.
How can you promise people that you'll take them across the river with a wheelbarrow and they follow you? That's very cultic. So they're our politics is the best exemplification of culture.
It actually predisposes Kenyans to magic thinking, meaning solutions that need to be worked out in a logical, practical way. Now, an element of spirituality is brought into it so that it's something that's supposed to happen magically. Changes that come about when you engage in certain activities over time, someone then tells you that all you need to do is believe very fervently and some of these things will come to pass, and it is actually not true. You see, the inclination towards believing things that are magical tells you that somebody has a desire not to face the harsh realities that they encounter on a daily basis. So that flight of fancy is something you entertain because confronting your reality is difficult. Just saying this is what I need, it is difficult. If you look at a culture that we have, and it's cultic, an expectation that people have that whenever they see somebody who is in the political realm, some money will be issued. When a political figure comes, you find people more or less standing and waiting to be given money. You know, it is actually madness. If you think about it, why would somebody just give you money for the sake of money when we all know that you get money when you earn it? But when somebody moves their thought from the process of earning and they determine that just by being in a certain place at a certain time in the presence of a certain individual, money will come to them. And then you have people who further this belief and encourage it. So,
maybe someone would argue, City, that you're buying my time for me to come here and listen to you, because if I weren't here, you'd be talking to this table by itself. So if you're a politician and you want my attention, and this is just, a philosophical argue, then pay me to be here, because I might as well have been in the shamba somewhere eating mangoes.
I want City to respond to you, but I want us to get back to our civic duty.
Yeah, sure.
I'm here this morning. I woke up myself. I'm here because you asked me to come.
True.
There's no financial transaction in this business.
Right.
But why am I here? I believe there's something I need Kenyans to know. When you are having a civic duty, when you go to meet a politician, your first responsibility is to understand, why does this guy want to offer himself for leadership? And that you want to interrogate the person and you want to be sure that this is the right person, so that you can also tell others that,
I think is the person. Yeah.
So it's not about a financial transaction. If you're going there for your time to be bought, and for that person, the fellow could have bought your time without you going there, you'd have been doing something productive, sends you money, and you tell me, I've received your money, tutakuwa pamoja. But you see, you decide to go and listen to this fellow, it cannot be an empty discourse. That's not how humanity is wired. You go to a meeting, whether it's an elders council or whether it's a community celebration, you go there because you have something to contribute and something to learn from it, so that you give as well as get. But this culture of you going to get, going to be given, is not what civic engagement is. It's not even African.
Yeah.
This is a very, and that's why we say
foreign.
It's a form of sickness. It's a form of sickness. The moment you wake up, and by the way, if you want to look at this, look at how we approach leadership. We bring in leaders and change them without any thought process. In fact, anybody arriving, and like you now arriving in your village with a V8, with a truck of things, you become of an excitement to them. And they say, yeah. They say, as you know, they say that, Kavambuvi, afadhali mbuvi. Yeah. So, and you're like, okay, why? Why? So you don't think these people are interested in you. It's their mind that is wired on things. Yeah, they're on spectacle and so on. And that's how we actually approach our politics in this country. That we go for the dramatic effect. You would think that we actually close our eyes, then vote, and then when we wake up, we wonder, who did we vote? Yeah. So, and that's our tragedy, because then we land from the frying pan into the fire almost every election time. whether it's governors, whether it's MPs, whether it's MCAs, whatever it is. And that's why our turnover is very high. We turn them over 75% every 5 years.
Election,
and as soon as we elect our favorite, we start complaining the next day.
So, Professor, getting back to the whole issue of, and you've said we have a cult issue in Kenya. Now, the second question is also part of what you have talked about in terms of the findings of this particular task force. The fact that perhaps people are driven to this cult situation because of their levels of poverty. We have seen a lot of preachers preaching prosperity gospel, for example. Could it be that the reason why people are flocking to these churches and other religious institutions or religious outfits, it is because they're looking for that prosperity that is being preached by these pastors or preachers?
Actually, I've remembered something that I want to characterize so that when I go into the people, it comes in. If you look at this report, the task force report, look at the flowing language that these members are using to praise the president. They say, we thank the president for his visionary leadership. And then they go somewhere and say, we thank the president for giving us this opportunity. Now that's cultism. They have, that's
a cult in itself.
It's a cult. Yes. Because you are given a task because you are competent and because there's a problem. Why don't you then, address that? Tell us, look, it was very important that at a time such as this issue be investigated, and we thank God that we were the ones given the opportunity. There's nowhere where they even
the language would have been different.
Yeah, there's nowhere even where they thank God in that report. They seem to thank man in that report, and that's a cult. That's a problem.
Yes.
Now back to where we are, and is in that now the symptom that we are dealing with.
Yes.
That you have a people given a task and terms of reference with public resources, but they already have a mind that the person who has given this task wants to hear this, and they take what the person wants to hear, not what they find. The other way around, and I want to remind you about basic things about Adam Smith. Adam Smith was one of the founders of political economics and economics, so to speak. In The Wealth of Nations, he wrote that when you see a butcher slaughtering a very fat cow and displays the meat red and fatty, it's not because that butcher loves humanity, that he really cares that human beings must enjoy meat. No. He knows something about human beings. They love meat. And when you show them good meat, they'll buy it. So he knows the people have money, they have an appetite, he displays that they want, and they buy. So he loves himself, he knows he wants money from people, he gives people what he knows they'll be able to take from them.
Yes.
Now, I want to quickly tell you, there are preacher who then mounts a church and positions himself in a certain way or herself in a certain way, knows that there's a Kenyan out there looking for this kind of, I call it drama, this kind of show, whatever it is, or this kind of make-believe, and they will come. How many times have you seen people abused in these congregations?
Oh, so many
and
times.
They still come. Some are beaten, they
slapped,
still come.
kicked,
some, and they still,
whipped.
they still bring, they even sell their goods. They even sell land. They even sell houses to go and bequeath this man of God. So at the end of it all, it is something that we need to examine. That is this a play that people have discovered about human beings, and they know that once they go that way, they listen to it. And there's a characterization you can say in religion, you can say in politics, you can say in business, you can say, because I keep telling people that when you tell us that, these people are lazy, these people are that, remember that an entrepreneur who is looking at you says, these people from Mukambani, if I do this, they are likely.
Capture.
Yeah. So when you're looking at people either from the mountain or wherever it is, what those people have decided is that they know they are business people, and they also know that they have a product that some people want. So you go and give them the product. So it is about how markets work. It's about how systems work. what is it that you're positioning and what market are you targeting and who is likely to come through.
Yes.
When you have a country of desperation, you have a country of poverty, you have a country where people wake up, they have no hope, you position yourself as the hope carrier and the hope builder. So when you position it, people will come to listen to that hope and they'll go away feeling encouraged. And sometimes, yes, they are encouraged. Sometimes it is there is a hallucination. But whatever the case, what we need to understand is that there are forces at work here. You have an idea of what people want, you've positioned yourself, and people that you are targeting actually troop to you.
Yes.
Similarly, when we were talking about, there was one Catholic church. At some point, why did Protestantism begin? And even from Protestantism, how did the other
splinter groups form? Yes.
The
It
Lutherans
is
and
that way. People always looking or getting satisfied with what they have and asking for something different and positioning a little different. And in some cases, it's those who have the status quo sometimes assuming that people are not also growing that actually creates that kind of offshoots or breakaways. So
you're right, Prof. In fact, what you say, you see, the findings of this particular commission is framed within a setup that seems to meet a need that arose within the country. The deaths shocked the nation, and this is an attempt to supposedly provide a solution. So you look for a group. Now this is where the fiction begins. You start by saying you have experts. You don't tell us what they're actually experts in, but they're a group of people. The fact that people have titles doesn't necessarily make them experts.
Yes.
Not necessarily.
Yes, I agree, yes.
So here you have these people, and they also preamble the discussion by making it appear like it's going to be scholarly. And then you look at what this supposed scholarly finding is about, and then again you find more fiction. And the Prof is right. You already predetermine what it is that you want to present. So what you are doing is sugarcoating it so that you preamble it and then you continue and you give the impression that what you are actually presenting is well researched, well thought out, is following certain laid down procedures. But therein now lies the true fiction, because when you start examining it along the parameters that they have set, you find it is not so. It is actually not so. That's why I'm calling it fiction.
Yes.
Okay? Now, there's a writer called Tom Wolfe. Tom Wolfe came up with an interesting phrase. It's around the year 2006, called the fiction absolute, where somebody begins a certain thought, which in essence is a propaganda. You want to persuade thinking in a certain direction, so you begin by asserting certain views, and you borrow from what is already believed, whether partially or wholly, and you include it in it so that you then assemble the thought process in a certain direction.
So it's like planting seeds.
Yes, and then, but you already know the conclusion. But the idea is so that when you conclude, it is very easy for someone to believe that what you have stated in the conclusion is the same, and yet they may be diametrically opposed. So it is fiction. Now, why am I bringing this so strongly? The biggest cult that we actually have in this country is our politics, and the politicians are the cult leaders. You only need to look at the groupings of our political parties and the leadership and how it is formed and how people respond. The manner in which the people respond to their chosen leaders is actually completely illogical. Look at any political leader in this country who is called a party leader. The support they have is illogical.
Yeah.
People talk about leaders who they feel benefit them, and the benefits that citizens of this country believe are benefits people who sort of like provide you with employment. They don't realize that somebody who grows an economy and ensures that there is more money because of the robust economy will automatically create jobs. They think jobs have to do with you being employed.
Yes.
They don't realize that a growing economy creates jobs because there are things that people want to do. When people have money, they want to spend. When they spend, whoever produces has to produce more because there are more people who have money to buy. That's how you create all these things. But they don't talk about that. They talk about how they want to employ. So there's a pressure for people to be employed as police cadets, army cadets. Anytime the government seeks to employ, the number of people who apply outstrip the demand completely.
Yes.
Now, what am I saying? How do you get an entire nation to have their minds focused on things that actually don't work for them? things that in essence don't actually benefit them. And how do you get a whole bunch of people to actually believe in the things you're saying when it is evidenced that these things don't actually work the way you've said they're going to work? And with every attempt at trying to pronounce that they work, you can see they actually don't work.
Yeah.
And yet we believe they work. So you tell me.
Yeah.
When you're talking about cult, and you're talking about the mental state that we are in and how we seek to follow, the ingredient that leads us astray is something called hope. There is the understanding that something good will come out of it. So even when good isn't there, you still hope that you will see good.
Prof, you also mentioned in their findings something to do with witchcraft.
Yeah, they talked about what they called repugnant cultures and traditions, and witchcraft and so on come in.
Right.
You see, there's no major difference between witchcraft and any other belief system. It's just that you have this what others will call crude, or what others will call backward or primitive, but you have this belief that somebody can work this and a miracle or some magic happens. So there's a bit of that. So that is an issue that we must deal with. In this country, do we have people who believe in that? Yes. Are they people that you need to condemn or you need to handle in a manner that actually appreciates where they're coming from and therefore where they should be? So there's a better way to respond to them than otherwise. Back to what we were saying, you see, at the end of the day, religious organizations have existed alongside other belief systems. There's nothing that's going to stop a believer in witchcraft from believing in it except some light that they might come across to see the change.
At Damascus moment.
At Damascus moment, yeah. Nothing. So, and the society will live like that for as long as we know it, because certain factors work the way they work. So, in other words, when you want to solve a problem, do not believe that one piece or one suit will fit everyone. Now, that's the problem with these guys. These guys arrived at this task force and they decided that all religious organizations are the same. That even when you look among Christian organizations, that all they need is a chairman, a secretary, a treasurer, a committee. Yet you know that some churches are organized differently.
True.
The Catholics are organized very differently. The Presbyterians are organized very differently.
Anglicans.
The Anglicans are organized very differently.
Lutherans.
The Lutherans, the Methodists, they're organized very differently. Including the AIC.
Yes.
The AIC that is a popular church in some area. It's organized differently. The point I'm making is that every one of these religious organizations has its own structures. So if you tell them now to give you a chairman, to give you a secretary, and to give you a treasurer, what are you really saying? What are you really saying? It means that you actually don't understand. You don't understand the episcopal nature of churches. You don't understand the Presbyterian mode. You don't understand. And that's the problem of this religious bill and even the task force. It wants to speak to everybody. It wants to treat a mosque the same way as it wants to treat
a church,
a meeting. You know, friends meet. The friends, the friends meeting.
Yes,
they meet. Yeah, and then you want to treat you see the Hindus in the same way as say
SDA.
No,
you can't.
They are different, and so you must understand that they come to this with unique, peculiar features. So you can't bring a bill that purportedly works for all of them. Indeed, the model constitution that is tagged on this religious bill is a sham model. It's really a sham model. It is so simplistic that it misses the aim and the objects of legislation.
Someone would think that the individuals in the task force, you wouldn't lack maybe a Catholic or a Hindu. They might not necessarily be clergy of these particular institutions, but I mean, if you have me, for example, in that task force, there are some things I'll tell you because I'm a Catholic, that won't fly. There are some things you'd have probably CT, he's an Anglican, and he'll tell you that one, kidogo. So the people that formed that task force, were they pagans? Were they atheists? Were they?
No,
I'm asking a question to understand the kind of makeup that informed the kind of decisions that they actually brought.
CT wants to comment. Because
Sure, why not?
You know the thing is this, the understanding with all these commissions when they are set up is this: you bring people who are thought leaders in that particular area of
Field,
endeavor,
yeah.
yes, and you ask them to actually do some form of research. I'm being polite here, so that they can arrive at an understanding. The research seeks to answer a question, so you arrive at an understanding of what is actually happening. That understanding is what you then present and say, this is what we have found. Okay? Now, the issue of solutions can come later. Now, so you start by saying, who actually qualifies to be in this
task force?
Yes, who? Because at the end of it, if you want to end up with a legal issue, you need to have legal minds there as well. And you have legal minds whose area of expertise is on this subject matter. And it is known that this is the area of expertise. Not just a specialty, there are people who now have even subspecialties in that field. Okay? Now, once you have that cohort, then you have started and people feel, actually, these people represent a group that may actually get us to where we want. If we start questioning that group and the composition, we already have a problem even before we began. So when you then present, we will then look at your report with a tooth comb. We will really look at it. And we will start with what you told us was the beginning, the preamble, everything will be looked at. And if we find it wanting, whatever conclusion you arrive at, we'll have to dismiss and say, actually, no. You haven't done the job that you're supposed to do. Why am I saying this? We cannot be reacting to a situation that has happened on this planet from time immemorial, from the time human beings understood religion. Just because people have died, I personally wouldn't have bothered with looking into this and bringing the religious angle. I would have asked the question, how did this happen in the first place? How did we even allow this to have happened in the first place?
Where were the security apparatus?
Yes. How did this happen?
How come people have not been arrested?
Yes.
So there are other issues.
Yes.
But I want to buttress where we are on. By the way, the members of this task force are very eminent religious leaders. There were 2 senior councils that I know. One of them is now late. And it had a representation across.
Okay.
My problem is, did they go with their mind or did they suspend their minds? I suspect that they suspended their minds because they had a government task. When I said that they had false starts, when you read their methodology, they say they invited memoranda. So they got several memoranda from everywhere. Then they say they went to counties and they met people. In their list of stakeholders that they engaged with, it is heavy on government. It's heavy on county governments. It's heavy on government officials. It's heavy on civil society organizations. It's heavy on other groups. And it's very light
on Wanjiku.
Forget even Wanjiku. It's very light on faith-based organization. In other words, you're talking about a faith issue, and you're asking everybody else except giving us a very clear understanding. You see, today, if you want to ask about witchcraft, you can't just go and ask anybody in the street. They'll tell you, we don't understand that, we don't know it. Ask the people who believe in it and who know how its effect. They'll give you an idea.
Talk to witch doctors. That is what you're saying.
Yes. Talk to herbalists. Talk to people who believe this practice works. And talk to politicians who go to those witch doctors every election time. And talk to them. Say, why do you believe in these guys? In other words, there are people that you consult for their knowledge and for their contribution to an issue. In this task force report, they talk to everybody else except talk to religious groups in a manner that identified them as a clear target to give them an explanation. Because eventually, the law they actually bring out is against the religious groups or is for religious groups. But the people that have consulted are everybody else except those groups. So that gives you a skewed approach, and it also tells you where their mind was as they were looking at this whole thing.
Yeah. Someone is asking here online.
Yes.
Why do this is Sonnet? And why do we need a governmental mandated religious task force in the first place?
The task force was government because it's the president that appointed it. But the issues were Kenyan issues and there were also religious issues. Was the president right in appointing? I don't think so. He was wrong. He was right in appointing it. But there was a problem. However, was the problem such that it required this task force? My answer is no. You see, City and I have told you that the problem in Shakahola is people went to sleep. When a Kenyan dies, it's the responsibility of the government of Kenya to know why and who has killed the person. And that's why we do post-mortem.
Right.
If a Kenyan leaves their home and goes to a destination X, it is the responsibility of the Kenyan government to ensure that that Kenyan is safe and reaches their destination. In other words, security, public service, roads, everything should be such that a Kenyan wanting to move from one point to the other is safe and it's okay. So the business of governments to know what Kenyans are doing, where they are, and especially if Kenyans are being conned or if Kenyans are being lured, if Kenyans are being killed, if Kenyans are being buried secretly, it's a business of government to know that actually a Kenyan is public health demands that there's a way in which a dead should be buried. So you can't have a situation where a Kenyan dies, a Kenyan is buried, no permit is issued, because even issuance of permit has a purpose, that you are recording deaths and births and those kind of things. So back to this, it is a failure of governance, it's a failure of security, it's a failure of our criminal investigation system, it's a failure of holding people to account. I keep saying that a crime does not have a color. A Christian can commit a crime, so can a Muslim commit a crime, a pastor can commit a crime, so can a politician commit a crime. So there's no law that should be specific for politicians who commit crimes and for church leaders who commit crimes. No. Criminal law applies to us all.
Everyone.
So what we needed is not yet another law for religious organization. Is to ask the investigators, the DCI, is to ask people in charge of homicide, to ask the DPP and others, if Kenyans died, investigations were done, how many people have been prosecuted for murder? How many people have been charged? The drama that has followed this whole thing, eventually nobody is ever going to be held accountable.
Prof, okay, this was sparked by the Shakahola situation. But do we actually need some sort of regulation or some checks and balances like they do have in Rwanda?
These checks and balances, when you talk about it, what exactly do you mean?
Do we need a situation whereby we can actually decide whether city is fit to open a church or not, just because he can preach, he can...
Who is to decide?
That's what I'm asking. Is there a need for such...
Who decides if there's a need?
Do we need... Is there a need for someone to actually make that decision that city can open a church as opposed to Professor Oloo opening a church?
There's something...
Or a mosque for that matter.
Freedom, much as there are those who argue that the very nature and the essence of it is absolute, it isn't. Because it actually doesn't exist without a check and balance. And the check and balance has to do with the details that pertain to the diversity of individuals. Your freedom vis-a-vis my freedom. And when it is that your freedom infringes on my freedom. It's a dialectical discussion that we can go on with. But the point I'm trying to make is this. What really are we discussing? We are discussing the lapse of the security apparatus in the country that led to the death of very many people. And we are discussing the deaths being brought about by an individual who claimed to be a religious leader. And there is a trail of evidence that this is somebody who had been sanctioned on very many occasions. He had even had his TV station shut down. This is somebody whom the law ought to have acted on a long time ago, or should have been under watch. That he could take people to this location over time and lure very many other people, when clearly there was a clear indication of the sort of person he was. That is not a religious issue. It is a lapse on the security. apparatus. So the question that you have to ask is, why was there a lapse? Who are the individuals who are supposed to be charged with ensuring that such a thing does not actually occur, or this individual doesn't actually function in the manner that he functioned that led to him luring people?
And that is why I started by saying that Shakahola might have been the thing that started this conversation, or rather that whole task force and the bill. But if we're looking at other incidences, for example, you also said there are churches where people go and they're whipped, they're beaten, and they still go back there. Churches where people are duped and they give their property to these particular religious leaders. So Shakahola might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but is an actual need for some sort of regulation.
Who decides?
Oh, yeah.
I'm asking the question again. Who decides? You see, this constitution that we have moving, it took a very long time for us to get here. And you know one of the things that they did? The citizenry were asked. People opined on it. And that's why public participation is a very key pillar in this constitution that we have.
Yes.
Religious organizations already exist. Governing bodies of religious organizations already exist. Organizations that cover Muslims, Hindus, and everybody already exist.
Yes. But
if you wanted regulation, should you not task these people with coming up with suggestions as to how they feel they should be regulated, instead of asking other people? Yes, when these organizations, umbrella bodies, already exist.
Okay, what is our worry? Our worry is that some of these people, in the name of preachers, might be criminals, isn't it? Do we have a criminal investigation system in place?
Do we have the DCI?
Do we have the certificate of good conduct in place? In other words, do we have a mechanism of checking whether movie could be predisposed to criminality? Yes, we do.
Yes.
Do you need one specific one for pastors? No.
Okay.
Let the criminal investigation check and say, this guy, and by the way, most of these guys may even have had a stint in the prison.
Yes.
And they got converted in the prison. So when they leave the prison and they get this calling, and they become pastors, you can't hold them to their past. Similarly, what we are dealing with here is that this is not a job. You can't vet me and say now I'm fit to be a preacher. If I don't have the calling, I don't have it. There has to be something about a calling. There's something to do. You remember Saul? Saul was a serious zealot, a serious lawyer, persecuting Christians.
Oh, yes.
Until he met his Damascus moment and he became even more zealous for Christ than anybody else. In other words, there's nobody you can touch and say this one is not fit, because God is not man to determine who can work for him and who can't work for him. So if we start now arrogating to men, the bureaucrats, that you go to some office somewhere in some tower in town, and to be vetted as to whether you can be. The easiest thing you are telling me is that you can go there with a brown envelope of 100,000, give the fellow, and you get your clearance. In other words, you have exposed people to unnecessary extortion, and you've also you're making millionaires unnecessary. Let these people work hard for their money. Not that I'm just going to be vetted, I'm giving you, bribing you. So for me, we don't need.
Okay. We don't need regulations.
We don't need regulations. We don't need the government to choose for us our pastors.
Okay.
We don't need government to tell us who is going to preach for us and what message we should have. But now you're also regulating the message. No. Just like we don't need any regulation on political speeches. And that's why we listen to all of them.
But at least for that, we have the NCIC that will actually check that Professor Oloo here is not, doing, is not spewing hate speech to the people.
Let's agree. That's why that NCIC has never arrested, neither has it ever prosecuted anyone. Neither.
But it is because their powers have been...
No, forget about it. You see, let me tell you something, Movie. Let me tell you something.
Yes.
There is absolute right of freedom of speech. I can call CT names now. That's my opinion. Does it make CT that? And you cannot stop me from expressing my opinion, however silly I may be. Okay. In other words, there is even freedom for one to be stupid. and idiotic. Yeah, in fact, there's a book called Surrounded by Idiots. So there is a place where idiots also contribute to the society. Because if there were no idiots, there would be no solutions. So in other words, you can't stop the society and want to panel beat it into a certain... The society is diverse. It is multifaceted. Let's allow 1,000 flowers to bloom. Let my stupidity be the reason why you run a show every day.
Yeah.
Let my sinfulness be the reason why the churches exist, so that perchance they can preach to me, and then I get converted. In other words, it is not because we have no problems. We do have them. But the solution is not to try to pretend that we can solve all of them in a manner in which these guys are suggesting, bring a religious organization bill. No. That's very simplistic.
Yes.
And it is looking at symptoms rather than looking at the causes. We are asking and we are saying, what is the difference between a Kenyan who goes to Shakahola and a Kenyan who goes to a political rally? What's the difference? What is the difference between a Kenyan who believes that his life will be better because of a wheelbarrow and a Kenyan who believes that he can sell his property and go and be prayed for? Yeah. What is the difference between a Kenyan who believes that this guy, even though he didn't deliver as a governor in the term 1, he can still now deliver in the... What is the difference?
Interesting question.
Yes.
Professor, we are about to take a short break. We have about a minute before we do that. But, countries such as Rwanda, for instance, have done it. They have done their very best to, at the very least, ensure that if you want to become a preacher in their country, at least kuwa na a theological, I'm not sure if it's a diploma or a degree, but at least lazima ukomendo umefanya theology for you to be able to open a church, a mosque, a temple, or whatever it is that you want to open. Shouldn't we have something similar here in Kenya?
Wewe nikuulize wewe. Jesus alienda shule gani? Jesus alienda university gani?
But that was 2000 years ago.
No. But you see, which university did he go to?
He didn't go to any university.
Yes, there was a natural endowment. He came from God himself, and he did what God asked him to do. In other words, some of these things don't need a degree. Which degree does an imam need? Which degree does a street... the thing is, which degree does even a politician need? You don't need a degree to lead. What we need is, what is your commitment? What is your calling? Are you really passionate about what you're doing?
Okay.
The passion, the commitment, and the calling is what you need. Be the person that is available to be of a certain use, not necessarily. The most educated people are not necessarily the best people in this society. I know that because I'm one of them. But I'm not saying that there's no value in education. But education in itself does not make you a better person.
All right.
In some cases, we have been failed by people who are very educated.
But Professor, as we conclude the conversation around this bill, do we have the need for regulation of whatever? And I know you mentioned we have all these other bodies. We even have the Inter Council of Religious something. I'm forgetting the name exactly, but Interreligious Council of Kenya. Yes, that's the word. We have NCCK, Council of Bishops, and many other organizations that we can talk about. But are they doing enough to ensure that individuals, Kenyans, are not led astray, for lack of a better word?
You see, first of all, you said something about this bill having been withdrawn. There are a number of allegations out there, so I don't want anybody to go to sleep because we think it's been withdrawn. I think that Mungatana withdrew the bill in the Senate.
Yes.
And I believe that the Attorney General, the current Attorney General, has resuscitated this bill. The other day there was a a cabinet approval of the task force and the bill. So this bill is not dead. But I know
so
there's a lot of...
alive and kicking.
It's alive.
Okay.
But there are also court cases, active court cases.
Okay.
All I am saying, it's not a good bill and it should not see the light of day.
Okay.
Because we don't need a law that regulates religious organizations. Religious organizations...
Freedom of worship.
Freedom of worship, freedom of expression, freedom of speech are things that are inalienable. They are in a human being. And it does not matter whether you disagree with me or disagree with them. It doesn't give you a right to legislate against them.
Okay.
Having said that, I am saying we have enough criminal, we have enough penal codes. We know what constitutes a crime. We know what does not constitute a crime. I've told you that if a preacher asks you or asks me to give him 2,000 bob and I go in my pocket and give him 2,000 bob, that's not theft. That's not robbery.
That's willing buyer, willing seller.
Willing buyer, willing seller. So let's forget about our judgmental selves and try to think that there's something wrong with that preacher. No. If he is edifying somebody and that person is feeling sufficiently philanthropic and sufficiently spiritual, and they want to react,
by all means.
Yep.
So let's forget about trying to imagine this is wrong, this is right, not in matters.
But remember also, all these religions, as we call them, not necessarily denomination, but religions, they all have a manual of operation. Some call it a Quran, some call it a Bible. And within their respective manual, Vita, whatever you call the manual of operation, within it, they give you the tenets of how that particular faith needs to be practiced. They all have a handbook. Now, if you read the handbook and you look at the requirements of, say, the leadership, it's also clearly stated.
Yeah.
This one I have to read because I subscribe to the Christian faith, and this is something I understand. This is what the Bible talks about somebody who is supposed to be a leader. He must be sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money.
Yeah.
You take that list, there are many people you'll disqualify.
Kwanza hapo kwa lovers of money, it's a wrap.
That's what I'm trying to tell you, that the manual of operation tells you all these entities, the Episcopal Conference, or the Congregation of Catholic Bishops, believe me, they all know these things, not that they don't know. They ought to be the people who have a self-regulatory mechanisms for their own, because they all subscribe to that same manual of operation.
Yeah.
You don't need another manual. Now the bill is now superimposing on the manual that already exists.
Yes.
And you're trying to tell us that bill is going to be superior to this in telling you how. Next, they're going to tell you how this manual of operation ought to be looked at, how it ought to be interpreted. No.
Allow me to read something about the Rwandan situation, and perhaps we just, and I'll just brush through. First of all, Rwanda regulates religion through the Rwanda Governance Board, RGB. So key regulations and requirements, registration rather. All faith-based organizations must register with the Rwanda Governance Board. Leadership qualifications. Leaders may need specific academic credentials such as a degree in theology from an accredited institution. Building and safety standards, of course, that is according to the buildings. Then political activity. Religious groups are prohibited from engaging in political activities or supporting political candidates. Foreign missionaries. Foreign missionaries need a temporary resident permit, which I think we also have here. Then foreign preacher notification. So religious organizations must notify the RGB about foreign preachers, providing a detailed itinerary and qualifications of those particular people. And then there's much more to that particular bill or regulation. So shouldn't we have at least something similar? Not necessarily regulate what Professor Oloo will preach on Sunday, but at the very least ensure that Professor Oloo is a certified theologian, and he, as much as akona kipawa cha kupreach na akona kipawa cha kusoma Biblia ama Quran, at least Professor Oloo akuwe anajua how to lead a congregation.
Unajua, religion is not economics. It's not what we know as to want to even economics does not regulate. That's why you leave markets to settle. The issue about religion and education are not connected. Having a degree does not make you a preacher. So to require theologians to have a degree is a good thing, but it's not necessarily a Christian thing or the solution to religion problems and so on. And Rwanda is not Kenya, please. Let's not try and super. I mean, why can't we also be the example to others? Why do we want to copy Rwanda? Why do we want to copy Somalia? To copy, I don't know, whatever. Why can't also those people come and copy us? And what we are saying is, when you look at our constitution and you look at Article 32, you look at Article 32, Sub-Article 1 and 2, the freedoms of religion are preserved. And because they are preserved, it's important that we live within that confine.
Okay.
Again, when you look at what I call the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment preserved or ousted any attempt by Congress or any legislation or any government to legislate against religion and freedom of speech. It preserved, it protected. Now, what we are saying is that matters of religion, and I want to refer you to Paul writing to the Romans.
Yes.
In chapter 2, verse 13 and 15, particularly 15. And this is what it says, because it's important that sometimes we have an authority to refer to. What it says in chapter 15 is that these matters of the law are written in the hearts. And it takes our conscience to accuse us, to know whether we are right or wrong. So government is not the conscience that Paul is talking about. I want to read it to you so that you don't think I'm just talking heresies. 15,
Yes.
This is what Paul says in 15. Let me just get it so that we are very... and it's about Gentiles and about the Jews and so on, from 13 there, but I want to stick to 15. It says, they demonstrate that God's law is written in their hearts, for their own conscience accuses them, and that for their own conscience and thoughts either accuse them or tell them they are doing right.
Okay.
Government is not a thought. Government is not a conscience. I don't need to tell CT what to do that is right. Let CT's conscience, let his thoughts either accuse him or affirm him.
Okay.
And that's it. Let all of us in that space saying we are working for God be accountable to him for what we do. We cannot be accountable to man.
All right. Ushasema, Professor.
Yeah.
I guess we shall leave it at that.
Yeah.